The sky above Earth had been clear that morning, a calm, ordinary day for the billions of souls who still called the planet home. That was until the Viraki Empire descended like a thunderclap from the blackness of space. Their warships, vast as mountains and as cold as the void, blotted out the sun. Admiral Elias Work was among the few who saw it coming. As commander of the ISS Valkyrie, a Black Ops dreadnought, he had been stationed at Earth's defense perimeter. An invisible line humans had drawn in the sand, never expecting a true assault from beyond the stars. But the Viraki were not like any foe humanity had ever faced. They came without warning, and with a savagery that would forever change the course of history. Work watched from the bridge of his ship as the first of many Viraki kinetic strikes slammed into the planet's surface. They were fast, brutal, and precise. Massive projectiles, sent from orbit, hitting Earth like hammer blows. The impact was immediate. Cities crumbled. Oceans boiled. Forests ignited. Admiral, Lieutenant Harris's voice trembled. They're bombing everything. It's all over. Work remained silent, his eyes fixed on the monitors. He could see the trails of smoke rising from every corner of the Earth, flashes of light as entire regions vanished in an instant. The global defense network was decimated in mere minutes. No missiles were launched in retaliation. No defense fleet emerged from the Earth's atmosphere. The planet had no hope of countering such an attack. Yet, Work's gaze remained unwavering. The Valkyrie was far from Earth's last hope. It was humanity's spear, poised to strike back once Earth's pulse had been extinguished. "Sir," Harris continued, her voice now steel, "what do we do?" Work's jaw tightened. The loss was unimaginable, but there was no time to mourn. Earth was gone, but humanity was not. "Prepare the crew for immediate departure," Work commanded. "We're not staying to die." He turned to the tactical officer, his mind already calculating their next move. "Is the stealth system intact?" "Running silent." "Admiral, we're undetected." "So far," the officer confirmed. "Good," Work muttered. "We stay hidden, gather what we can, and we don't stop until we hit the Viraki where it hurts." The crew moved swiftly, operating with the grim efficiency of soldiers who had seen death and understood it well. The Valkyrie, armed with weapons and technology unknown to the Viraki, slipped silently away from the carnage that was once Earth. It was a ship built for vengeance, not survival. It had always been meant for this. Work stood on the bridge, the image of Earth's ruin flickering on the screen in front of him. His heart burned, but there was no room for grief. Not yet. Not when there was a war to fight. His fingers grazed the cold steel of the control panel. "We will make them regret this. I swear it." Humanity had been struck down, but it was not out. The cradle of humanity had been shattered, but from the ashes, something far more dangerous would rise. The void of space was an unfamiliar, silent tomb for the remnants of Earth. Humanity's home had been reduced to a graveyard, its once proud cities turned to ash. The ISS Valkyrie moved through the darkness, unseen and undetected, a ghost ship in the cold, endless expanse. Admiral Elias Work stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, his fingers trailing across the glowing surface as he studied the path ahead. The Valkyrie had been designed for one purpose: retaliation. It was a ship capable of war on a scale that even the Viraki Empire couldn't have foreseen. Built in the shadows, hidden away from prying eyes, the Valkyrie was humanity's last and most powerful weapon. The crew of the ship had been small, just under 200, but they were veterans. Engineers, soldiers, ex-intelligence officers, all survivors of the Earth's collapse. They had all lost something: families, homes, futures, and they had all been shaped by the brutal hand that the Viraki had dealt. Now, they were more than a crew. They were the vengeful ghosts of humanity, and they would not rest until the Viraki Empire had paid in full. Work leaned over the tactical display, his thoughts dark. No one had ever believed humanity could survive an attack like this. The Viraki hadn't. The galaxy hadn't. But we are not broken. Report. Rourke's voice was low, but sharp as he addressed the ship's chief engineer, Lieutenant Rain, who stood at the far end of the command deck. We've been monitoring the Viraki for weeks now, Admiral. Rain replied, her hands flicking over the control panel in front of her. Their communications are scrambled, but we're hearing fragmented reports. Most of their fleet is focused on consolidating their hold on the systems they've captured. They think we're gone. They think Earth is dead. They're wrong, Rourke said grimly. We'll remind them of that. His fingers hovered over the console, and the holomap flickered with new coordinates. The first target was an easy one, a Viraki resupply station on the fringe of the Viraki Empire, a place of strategic importance, but one the Viraki believed was beyond any threat from humanity. The station is lightly guarded, but if we hit them there, we'll have their attention. It'll be the first of many. They'll realize we're not done, Rourke said, his eyes narrowing. Rain nodded. We'll need more than just a few hits to get them to notice us. We'll need to cripple their infrastructure, disrupt their systems. But I've got a plan for that. Rourke gave a sharp nod, then turned to the tactical officer. Get us into position. We hit fast and hard. No warnings. We leave them no time to react. Yes, sir, the officer responded. I'll initiate silent running. We'll be on them before they even know we're here. The Valkyrie moved forward, its sleek, black hull gliding through the darkness of space. The station's defenses were antiquated compared to the ships of the Viraki's main fleet, and they were designed for planetary defense, not interstellar combat. The Valkyrie, however, was not a conventional warship. Its stealth technology, scavenged from old human prototypes and combined with Viraki innovations from the ship's stolen data, made it invisible to almost every sensor the Viraki possessed. The first strike came without warning. The Valkyrie dropped from the shadows of a nearby asteroid belt, delivering a devastating salvo to the station's power grid before vanishing back into the dark. In seconds, the station was plunged into chaos. Systems fried. Alerts blared across the empty void. The Viraki were scrambling, unaware of what had just happened. Rourke's face remained stoic. This is just the beginning. The Valkyrie drifted in the shadow of a forgotten nebula, its hull a silent sentinel in the deep void. Its crew had grown accustomed to the weight of their mission. Retaliation, but more than that, a restoration of pride and vengeance for a fallen Earth. Rourke stood at the observation window, gazing out into the stars. His mind drifted back to Earth, to the lives lost, the families wiped out in a matter of moments. But he couldn't afford to dwell on that. Not yet. Admiral, Lieutenant Harris's voice broke through his reverie. She was standing just behind him, holding a datapad. We've intercepted something. A Viraki signal. A distress message of some kind. Rourke turned, eyes narrowing. Where's it coming from? Beyond the nebula, she said, pointing to the display on the pad. It's not far. We think it's an old military relay station. One of theirs, though it's been out of operation for years. Rourke's brow furrowed. A Viraki military relay station, abandoned. Why now? The idea of a derelict installation piqued his interest, but there was more to this than a simple signal. Prepare a team, he said, his voice decisive. I want answers. As the crew mobilized, Rourke gathered the core officers in the ship's briefing room. We've picked up a signal from a decommissioned Viraki military station. It's been broadcasting intermittently, but it's active now. The station itself was abandoned, but something about this doesn't add up. We're going to investigate, but we're going in carefully. I want that station swept from top to bottom. No mistakes. Rain, the ship's chief engineer, tapped her datapad. Sir, the station's in an isolated part of Viraki-controlled space. It's still within range of their primary sensor networks, though. We'll need to go silent and avoid detection. Rourke nodded. I'm counting on you. Make sure we stay off their radar. The Valkyrie dropped out of warp near the station, cloaking itself in the shadows of nearby asteroids. For all its power, the ship's stealth systems made it as invisible as a whisper in the dark, and the crew moved like phantoms through the void. They'd made their way to the station without incident, the eerie silence of the dead relay station stretching out before them. Rourke led the boarding party, his boots echoing softly against the metal floors of the deserted station. The crew moved swiftly, each footstep measured. The station was a labyrinth of abandoned corridors and darkened rooms. The air was thick with dust and the faintest hum of dormant systems. After an hour of searching, they found it. A small control room buried deep within the station. The flickering holographic displays illuminated the room, casting long shadows on the walls. Harris moved forward, her eyes scanning the console. "What is this?" she murmured, tapping a few commands into the interface. "This is a cache, it looks like." "Human data." Rourke interrupted, his heart skipping a beat. Harris's expression darkened. "Yes, these are human signals, old frequencies from Earth's early space programs. They're encrypted, but this is our technology." Rourke stepped forward, a wave of realization crashing over him. This wasn't just a dead station. It was a Viraki facility used to track humanity, an operation they had never decommissioned. And what they had found here, buried beneath the layers of Viraki control, was a relic from humanity's past, left unnoticed by the galaxy for centuries. "Get it all," Rourke ordered, his voice colder now. "This is proof we were here long before they thought. It's time they learned they didn't wipe us out. We were already here." As they downloaded the information, Harris paused. "There's something else, sir. A human distress signal, dating back almost a century." The room fell silent. Rourke clenched his fists. They thought we were nothing but a memory. The Valkyrie cut through the blackness of space, its hull invisible to the untrained eye, a phantom ship that only existed for those who dared to look too closely. Rourke's mind was ablaze with what they had uncovered at the Viraki station. Evidence that humanity had been under the Viraki's watchful eye long before their recent attack on Earth. It was clear now, the Viraki had underestimated them. They had thought Earth's people weak, primitive, easily wiped from the stars. But the relics they had discovered proved otherwise. Humanity's influence had already been felt across the galaxy in ways the Viraki could never have imagined. Rourke stood before the crew once again, the weight of their next mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. The Valkyrie had gathered enough intel to know where their next strike would hit, the heart of the Viraki Empire's communication network, an installation deep within their territory, protected by layers of security, and a planet surrounded by orbiting fortresses. But Rourke wasn't worried. The Valkyrie had been built for moments like this. Precision strikes, quick assaults, and the kind of military genius that caught enemies off guard. "Here's the plan," Rourke said as he addressed his officers. "We'll be hitting a communications hub just outside the Viraki capital. The system feeds their entire empire, from troop movements to supply chains. If we can sever it, they'll be blind for weeks. We won't just cripple their infrastructure. We'll show them that no one, not even the Viraki, can hide from humanity." Rain stepped forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "The station's heavily guarded. Even with our stealth, we'll have limited time before their reinforcements arrive. We'll need to hit it fast and hard, or we'll be running." Rourke's jaw tightened. "We'll hit it so fast, they won't know what's coming." The Valkyrie slipped through the void, inching closer to its target. The communication hub was perched on a barren moon, flanked by two Viraki warships that orbited the station like sentinels. To most, it would have seemed like a formidable fortress. But to the crew of the Valkyrie, it was just another target, a symbol of the Viraki's arrogance. The attack was swift, a calculated display of humanity's newfound power. As the Valkyrie dropped from the shadows, it unleashed a barrage of EMP bursts that knocked out the station's outer defenses. The Viraki warships began to scramble, sending out distress signals, but it was too late. Rourke's voice rang clear through the bridge. Now, the team deployed onto the surface, using jetpacks to navigate the craggy, hostile terrain. The station was an imposing structure of steel and alien design, towering over the moon's surface like a metal colossus. Rourke led the charge, his boots hitting the cracked, dusty ground with a determined thud. "Move fast. Secure the communications relay," Rourke barked, his voice echoing in their comms. The crew split into groups, each assigned a task. They planted explosives along the station's key infrastructure, hacking into the central communications grid. Each soldier was methodical, moving with precision to avoid detection, but when they struck, it was like a sudden storm. Explosions rang out as the Valkyrie's forces tore through the station's outer defenses. The Viraki were quick to respond, but their forces were disorganized, confused, blind to the true scale of the human assault. They were used to overwhelming force, not swift, surgical strikes from an enemy they thought was dead. "Charge complete," Harris shouted, a grin breaking across her face. "The station's going down in 5, Admiral." Rourke didn't smile. He didn't need to. He only spoke the words that had driven him from the moment the Viraki had destroyed Earth. "Let them know we're coming." With that, the Valkyrie released one final barrage, detonating the explosives at the station's core. The explosion was deafening, and the station's communications array was reduced to a cloud of burning wreckage. It sent a ripple through the Viraki's network, severing their connection to half of their military operations. The Valkyrie streaked back into the dark, leaving the chaos behind them. But this time, it wasn't just another isolated strike. The Viraki Empire had felt the sting of humanity's retribution, and they would never forget the cost of underestimating Earth's people. As the crew watched the destruction unfold on their screens, Rourke's voice broke the silence. "Prepare for the next phase. They've seen us. Now we make them fear us." The Valkyrie hurtled through space, its dark form like a shadow swallowed by the void. But for the first time in weeks, the crew felt a brief flicker of something they hadn't dared to feel since Earth's destruction: hope. The Viraki's communications hub was gone, torn apart in a blaze of fire and debris, and the aftermath would leave the Empire scrambling to recover. But it wasn't just the destruction of a key installation that had the crew energized. It was the signal they had sent to the galaxy. Humanity was still alive, still fighting, and more importantly, still capable of striking back. Rourke stood before his officers in the briefing room, his gaze intense. "We've shown the Viraki that we can hit them where it hurts, but that was just the beginning. We need to step up our operations. They're already hunting us, but we're going to give them something to really fear." Lieutenant Harris, standing beside him, projected a new map onto the wall. "We've been tracking their movements. They're reorganizing in response to the attack, consolidating their forces around their capital. They've deployed additional warships and ramped up patrols around key systems. If we stay in their territory too long, we risk drawing more of their forces." "We won't stay," Rourke replied, his voice cold and unyielding. "But we will make sure they know we're not going away. It's time we escalate." Rain, the ship's chief engineer, interjected, her voice sharp with concern. "Admiral, we've taken down their communications hub, but their fleet is still intact. If we continue to make moves like this, they'll come after us with everything they've got." "I know," Rourke said, his eyes hardening. "But we're not the ones who'll be running. We've taken the first step. Now we make them pay." Over the next few days, the crew of the Valkyrie carried out a series of devastating hit-and-run attacks across the Viraki-controlled sectors. Each strike was meticulously planned and executed with surgical precision. The Valkyrie slipped into enemy space like a ghost, launching surprise attacks on supply convoys, weapon depots, and refueling stations, each explosion a reminder to the Viraki that their empire was not invulnerable. But the Viraki were no fools. They quickly realized they were being hunted, not by a distant force, but by the very species they had believed incapable of resistance, and they responded with brutal force. A Viraki warship, The Karath, commanded by General Zalen, was dispatched to hunt down the Valkyrie. A seasoned veteran of the Vuraki military, Zalen was known for his ruthless tactics and his unyielding pursuit of his enemies. He had been one of the architects of the invasion of Earth, and he took the destruction of the communications hub as a personal affront. "We've underestimated them," Zalen growled, his sharp, alien features illuminated by the dim light of the command room. "They think they can strike and escape unnoticed. We will make them regret it." His ship, a massive vessel bristling with weaponry, moved through space with a single purpose: to destroy the Valkyrie and the humans behind it. His tactics were simple, brutal: surround, overwhelm, and crush. He knew no mercy, especially when it came to those who dared to challenge the might of the Vuraki Empire. The Valkyrie wasn't waiting. Rourke knew that Zalen would come for them. It was only a matter of time. But he had already planned their next move. "This is the moment we turn the tide," Rourke said, his voice quiet but resolute. "Zalen wants to hunt us. We'll make sure he regrets that." The crew prepared for their most dangerous mission yet: a confrontation with the Vuraki warship Karath. The stage was set. The Valkyrie would enter the heart of Vuraki space, luring Zalen into a trap. But it wouldn't be an easy fight. The Karath was a warship of unimaginable power, and Zalen was no amateur. Rourke's plan was to strike at the heart of the Vuraki's arrogance, to show them that the Valkyrie was not just a ghost in the shadows, it was the vengeful fury of humanity. As the Valkyrie engaged the Vuraki forces, the tension was palpable. This would be their deadliest confrontation yet. One way or another, it would either mark the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's war for survival, or it would be the end of the Valkyrie and its crew. The vastness of space was a silent battlefield, and the Valkyrie drifted within the darkness, its sleek silhouette barely a whisper against the endless void. Its mission was simple: to lure General Zalen and his ship, the Karath, into a trap. But simple didn't mean easy. Rourke knew the Vuraki were relentless, and Zalen was no stranger to the art of war. He would come for them. And when he did, the Valkyrie would be ready. The crew moved with a quiet intensity, every action calculated. Their target was the Karath, a ship that dwarfed the Valkyrie in size, bristling with firepower. But it was also a ship of pride, Zalen's pride. And that was something Rourke intended to exploit. "We're in position," Lieutenant Harris reported, her fingers dancing across the tactical controls. "The Karath should be approaching in less than 15 minutes. "Stay sharp," Rourke replied, his gaze fixed on the view ahead. "We hit them fast, hit them hard. No hesitation. The second we reveal ourselves, we'll have only minutes before their reinforcements show up." Rain, the ship's chief engineer, was busy running final checks on the ship's cloaking and weapon systems. "We've got the systems primed, Admiral," she said, her voice focused. "The Valkyrie is ready to vanish when we need to. Just give the word." Rourke nodded. "And the torpedoes?" "Loaded. Enough to cripple the Karath if we get the shot," Rain replied, eyes scanning the diagnostics. "But we need to be careful. If we don't disable their shields first, we'll be sitting ducks." Harris looked over the tactical map. "They'll see us once we fire, but if we're lucky, they won't expect the attack to come from the direction we're taking." "Then let's make our luck," Rourke said, his voice low with resolve. "We're not running anymore. This is where we stand our ground." The Valkyrie was a ghost in the dark, silent, invisible, and lethal. It glided toward the Karath, its engines humming a low, almost imperceptible growl. The Vuraki warship was close now. Zalen was playing into their hands, growing overconfident as he followed the trail left by the Valkyrie. Rourke's eyes narrowed as the Karath came into view, a massive, looming figure in the distance. The ship's hull was an ironclad fortress, its weaponry a sheer testament to the Vuraki's power. But power, Rourke knew, was not always the key to victory. Initiating attack pattern, Rourke said firmly. "Engage." The Valkyrie dropped out of cloak in a heartbeat, surging forward with blinding speed. Within moments, they unleashed the first wave. EMP missiles designed to knock out the Karath's shields. The energy pulses slammed into the larger ship, but it was only the beginning. The Karath's shields flared, flickering under the assault, but the ship's hull held firm. Shields down to 30%. Rain shouted, her fingers working furiously at the controls. They've got their defenses up, but they're weaker than they think. Rourke didn't wait. Target their engines. We don't need to destroy them. We need to cripple them. Harris, lock on with the torpedoes. A series of explosive impacts rattled the Valkyrie's hull as the Vireki returned fire, their energy weapons blazing in retaliation. The Valkyrie darted through the debris, narrowly avoiding the laser blasts. But their strategy was paying off. Every hit weakened the Karath. Locking on, Harris said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Firing torpedoes now. The torpedoes rocketed forward, cutting through space with deadly precision, striking the Karath's engine core. The ship shuddered violently, its massive frame lurching as the blow hit. The Vireki ship responded with a desperate barrage of fire, but the Valkyrie was already back in the shadows, its engines firing to pull it out of range. The Karath had been struck, but it was far from finished. Rourke's breath came in short, measured bursts as he surveyed the damage. The Vireki weren't backing down. Vzalen was as relentless as ever. The battle had just begun. We need to hit them again, Rourke said, his voice low with determination. This time, we make sure they can't recover. As the Valkyrie re-engaged, the battle raged on. The Vireki would not give up easily, but neither would humanity. Rourke had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. And today, they would show Vzalen and the Vireki Empire exactly what it meant to strike at Earth's cradle. The Valkyrie rocked under the force of the Karath's retaliatory barrage. Blinding flashes of energy burned through the darkness of space, and Rourke's grip tightened on the armrest as the ship swerved to avoid another incoming blast. The damage was mounting. Shields at 50%, engines strained from constant evasion, but the crew had no intention of backing down. Not now. Not after everything they had lost. Report, Rourke barked, his voice steady despite the pressure mounting around him. Harris's voice crackled through the comms. We've taken some hits, Admiral. Minor damage to the starboard side. The shields are holding for now, but they won't last much longer if we don't finish this. Rourke's mind raced. They couldn't afford to prolong the fight. The Karath was a juggernaut, and if they didn't cripple it now, Vzalen would only retaliate with even more force. The longer this dragged on, the closer they came to the edge of their own desperation. Rain, what's the status on those torpedoes? Rourke asked, turning to the chief engineer. Her hands flew across the controls, eyes scanning the diagnostics. We've got one shot left, she replied, her voice tight. It'll be a direct hit to the engine core if we time it right, but we need to get closer. And I mean close. Closer? Harris's voice was sharp. That'll be risky. They've got us on their scanners now. The moment we get in range, they'll obliterate us. Rourke nodded, his mind sharp. He knew the odds. They were stacked against them. But humanity had always thrived when faced with impossible odds. It was time to take the fight to the Vireki, to force them to face the fury of a species that had been underestimated for too long. We've survived worse, Rourke said, his tone resolute. We get in close, take out their engines, and then we're gone. No hesitation. Do it. The Valkyrie accelerated into the fray, weaving through the firestorm of the Karath's energy blasts. Rourke's hands were steady as he guided the ship, maneuvering it with expert precision despite the chaos around them. The ship felt like an extension of himself now. Each turn, each lunge, calculated for maximum impact. We're in range, Harris announced. Torpedoes locked on. Fire, Rourke ordered. The torpedo shot forward with a deadly hiss, slicing through space toward the heart of the Karath. For a moment, Time seemed to slow. The crew watched in tense silence, knowing the success of this shot would determine their survival. But as the torpedo closed in on its target, disaster struck. The Kareth's shields flared back to full strength just as the torpedo was about to hit. The impact was deflected, and the Valkyrie rocked violently as a retaliatory blast slammed into its side. The ship spun out of control, alarms blaring across the bridge. "Shields down," Rain shouted. "We're exposed." Harris didn't hesitate. "We need to get out of here now." Rourke fought to maintain control, his knuckles white on the console. But just as it seemed like the Valkyrie would be overwhelmed, the unexpected happened, a sudden surge of energy from the ship's cloaking systems. "Captain, we're cloaked," Rain exclaimed, her fingers flying over the console. "I don't know how, but it's working. We've gone dark." For a moment, the Kareth was blind, its scanners failing to lock onto the Valkyrie. Rourke's eyes flicked to the tactical display. The torpedo had missed, but they had a chance. The Viraki had no idea where they were. "This is our moment," Rourke said, his voice low but filled with unyielding resolve. "They've lost us. Prepare for one last strike. We do it now." The Valkyrie's cloaking device hummed quietly as it slid back into the shadows of space. Zaylan's warship roared around, scanning for any sign of the enemy, but it was too late. The Valkyrie was already repositioning for a final assault. Rourke leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the Kareth's engine core. It was only a matter of time before the Viraki regained their bearings and began searching once more. But in this moment of confusion, they had an opening. The torpedoes reloaded. This time, there would be no second chances. "We're going in," Rourke said, his voice steady. "Full speed ahead. No more hiding. We finish this now." The Valkyrie surged forward from the shadows, a silver streak of vengeance. The crew was silent as they approached the Kareth once again. This time, the torpedo would strike true. The only question now was whether they would live to see the explosion. The tension in the bridge of the Valkyrie was suffocating. Rourke's eyes locked onto the tactical display as his fingers hovered over the command console, each breath drawn with the weight of their final decision. The Kareth loomed ahead, its massive form a relentless, malevolent presence in the dark void of space. But the Viraki warship was vulnerable now, its engines partially crippled from the earlier strike, its shields fluctuating under the strain of the battle. "Rain," Rourke said, his voice clipped. "Give me a status update. How much time do we have before they figure out where we are?" Rain's fingers flew over the console, her face tense. "They're already searching, Captain. It'll be only a matter of minutes before they recalibrate their scanners. We can't afford to wait." Rourke's mind raced. The Valkyrie was almost crippled, its shields failing, engines barely holding together after the exchange. But there was one thing the Valkyrie had that the Kareth didn't: the element of surprise. The cloaking system might buy them a few precious moments, but it wouldn't last long. "Prepare for the final strike," Rourke ordered. "We do it now, while they still think they're in control." The crew moved with deadly focus. Harris had already locked onto the Kareth's damaged engine core, and Rain was guiding the torpedo's targeting system, her every motion precise. There was no room for error, not now. Not with everything they had fought for hanging in the balance. "We're ready," Harris reported. "Torpedoes are locked. One shot. If it hits, we take them down for good." Rourke's heart hammered in his chest. He knew this was their last chance. Make it count. The Valkyrie emerged from the shadows of space, a streak of silver and death. The Kareth had finally picked up a faint trace of the ship's signature, but it was too little, too late. The Valkyrie surged forward at full speed, its engines groaning under the pressure. In that fleeting moment, everything seemed to slow, every decision, every movement hanging by a thread. The torpedo shot forward with a deafening roar, cutting through space like a comet streaking toward its inevitable target. It was almost poetic, the single deadly missile racing toward the heart of the Kareth, aimed directly at its failing engine core. The Karath fired blindly in retaliation, but the Valkyrie was already gone, slipping back into the shadows. The torpedo collided with the Vureki ship's core, sending a shockwave through space. A blinding flash of light erupted, followed by a wave of heat and radiation that rippled outward. The Karath shuddered, its massive frame breaking apart in a series of deafening explosions. The warship's engines detonated in a brilliant fireball, consuming the vessel in a blaze of destruction. Rourke watched, his jaw tight, his heart still pounding in his chest, as the remnants of the Karath disintegrated before his eyes. They had done it. The Vuraki's pride, their flagship, was no more. "We did it," Rain whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief, her hands shaking as she stared at the wreckage unfolding on the monitors. But Rourke knew better than to celebrate. The battle wasn't over, not yet. They had struck a critical blow, but the Vureki would not sit idle. Zaylan was dead, but the Empire would send others. It was only a matter of time before the Vureki would regroup and try to avenge their losses. "Status on the ship?" Rourke asked, still watching the remains of the Karath in the distance. "We're holding together, Captain," Rain answered, but her voice was weary. "We've got structural damage, but nothing critical. For now. We'll need repairs before we move on, but we've done what we came here to do." Rourke stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "We've made our statement. Humanity has shown the galaxy that we are not a species to be forgotten. This is just the beginning of the reckoning. Prepare for our next move." The Valkyrie drifted away from the wreckage, its engines still humming faintly in the void. The crew was battered, but their spirits were unbroken. The fight for Earth had only just begun. The Valkyrie was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of defiance, vengeance, and the burning will of humanity. In the silence of space, Rourke knew one thing. This war was far from over, and humanity would not rest until the Vureki had learned the full weight of their mistake.